In the quiet town of Cottage City during the late 1940s, the story began with a boy named Daniel who had recently moved into a new home with his family. At first glance, the house looked like any other on the block: white paint on the siding, a small garden in front, and a creaky wooden porch where neighbors often waved to each other in passing. But once inside, the atmosphere was different. The walls felt too cold, the air unnaturally heavy, and the silence seemed to linger longer than it should. The family brushed these feelings aside, thinking it was only the adjustment of living in a new place. Yet, within weeks, odd disturbances started to unsettle their lives. At night, Daniel complained of scratching sounds behind the walls, as though something clawed from within. His parents searched for rodents but found no trace. Soon, the noises grew louder, joined by faint tapping that traveled from one room to another. Household items began moving without explanation. A chair would be slightly shifted from its place, or a book would fall from a shelf even when no one was near. These were small incidents at first, easy to dismiss, until they became too frequent and impossible to ignore. The most chilling moment came when religious objects around the home began to react strangely. Crosses that once hung firmly on the walls dropped in the middle of the night, their nails bent as if forced out. Candles extinguished themselves, even without a draft. Daniel's aunt, a devout woman, swore she saw shadows stretch unnaturally across the boy's bedroom wall, twisting and curling as though alive. Neighbors whispered that something was wrong with the house, that it carried a presence best left unspoken. For Daniel's family, the sense of dread was no longer imagined, it was real, and it was only just beginning. Daniel's transformation began slowly, almost too subtle to notice at first. He became restless, often staring at corners of the room where no one else saw anything. His appetite faded, and his once lively conversations turned into long stretches of silence. Within weeks, his behavior grew darker. He snapped at his parents without reason, slammed doors in anger, and wandered the halls at night, muttering words that no one understood. His teachers at school noticed the change too. They reported episodes where Daniel would lash out violently, throwing books across the classroom or growling in a tone so deep it seemed impossible for a boy his age. As the days passed, marks began to appear on his skin. Long scratches lined his arms and legs, though no sharp objects were found near him. Sometimes the wounds appeared in the shape of letters, as though carved by an unseen hand. Doctors examined him, running tests and prescribing medicines, but nothing explained the strange injuries or his sudden bursts of unnatural strength. What disturbed his family most was the shift in his voice. At times, Daniel spoke with a rasp that sounded far older than him. On other occasions, he muttered phrases in foreign tongues, languages he had never been taught. The atmosphere at home turned suffocating. Lights flickered whenever Daniel entered a room. Furniture rattled at random moments, and the smell of sulfur filled the air. Relatives who came to visit left quickly, unsettled by the boy's hollow stare. His parents, torn between fear and desperation, finally sought help from their local priest. After witnessing Daniel convulse violently during prayer and spit out words of blasphemy no child could know, the priest gave a chilling verdict. This was not an illness of the body or mind. It was something far darker, something that science could not cure. The family's desperation pushed them to seek every possible answer. At first, they turned to science, hoping doctors and researchers might uncover an explanation for the terrifying events surrounding Daniel. A team of physicians examined him carefully, but each test came back normal. There were no signs of neurological disorders, no evidence of infections, and no medical explanation for his sudden shifts in personality or the strange marks appearing on his body. Psychologists suggested trauma or suppressed emotions, but when they attempted therapy sessions, Daniel's behavior only worsened. During one session, he erupted with a force that shocked everyone, overturning a heavy desk as though it weighed nothing. The experts could only conclude that the case was beyond their understanding. Next came investigators, armed with cameras, tape recorders, and scientific tools. They set up equipment in Daniel's bedroom, determined to capture proof of the disturbances. Strangely, every attempt failed. Cameras jammed or broke, photographs came out blurred, and audio recordings were filled with static even though the devices had worked perfectly before. On one occasion, notes written by a researcher vanished overnight, later discovered torn to pieces in the attic where no one had gone. The investigators, shaken and frustrated, abandoned their study, unwilling to risk further involvement. The more the family searched for answers, the deeper their hopelessness grew. Each failed attempt to find a rational cause only strengthened the sense that something far more sinister was at work. Even family friends began to distance themselves, frightened by the strange happenings. The once warm and lively home had become a place of fear, its halls filled with whispers and its rooms heavy with dread. With every door closing, there seemed to be only one path left: to call upon the church for help and prepare for an exorcism unlike any seen before. The night of the exorcism arrived with an uneasy stillness that settled over the house like a warning. The family had cleared Daniel's room of every object, leaving only a simple bed, a table with candles, and a wooden cross on the wall. Priests from nearby parishes gathered, carrying holy water, rosaries, and sacred texts. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation and fear. As the prayers began, the air seemed to shift, heavy and suffocating, as if the house itself resisted the ritual. Shadows flickered unnaturally along the candlelit walls, stretching and twisting in grotesque shapes. Daniel lay on the bed, his body rigid, his eyes glazed over as though he was no longer present. When the first verses were spoken, his body convulsed violently, thrashing with a strength far beyond his small frame. The priests struggled to hold him down, reciting louder, their voices competing with guttural roars that erupted from his throat. His voice carried multiple tones at once, some low and rumbling, others sharp and shrill. The sound was so unnatural that even the most experienced among them faltered for a moment. As the ritual continued, objects in the room shook violently. The wooden cross on the wall rattled before crashing to the floor. The odor of rot filled the air, thick enough to make the family gag and retreat from the doorway. At one point, Daniel's body rose above the bed, suspended for several seconds as his limbs bent at angles no human should endure. His screams echoed, but they were layered, as though many voices cried out in agony together. The priests pressed on, drenched in sweat, their words unwavering despite the chaos. Hours passed before, with a final shout of prayer, Daniel collapsed. Silence fell over the house, sudden and absolute, but the memory of what had taken place lingered like a scar that would never fade. In the days following the exorcism, the household remained eerily quiet, as though the very walls were exhausted from the ordeal. Daniel slept for hours at a time, his body weak and frail after the violent struggle that had consumed him. Though the priests declared the ritual a success, the family could not shake the fear that the silence was only temporary, that the entity might return at any moment. Neighbors avoided the house, crossing the street when they passed by, whispering about the strange events that had unfolded inside. What had once been a home filled with laughter now carried the weight of an unspoken curse. As Daniel grew older, he tried to lead a normal life, but the memories clung to him. He avoided churches, never attending Mass again, and whenever asked about his childhood, he remained silent. Friends described him as distant, haunted, and always watching shadows with cautious eyes. He lived, but he never truly escaped what had happened. His family, too, carried the burden. They refused to discuss the exorcism openly, yet every creak in the house, every flicker of a light bulb, reminded them of the terror they had survived. Over time, word of the case spread beyond the town. Journalists sought out the family, eager to uncover the truth, but the details remained elusive. Researchers attempted to document the phenomenon, calling it one of the most chilling possession cases ever recorded. Decades later, filmmakers adapted the story, transforming the private nightmare into a cultural legend. The resulting film shocked audiences worldwide, yet those who knew the real story insisted that the screen version was tame compared to the horrors that truly occurred. The legacy of Daniel's ordeal became larger than life, but at its core remained a terrifying truth: some mysteries cannot be explained, only endured.